Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. We're doing a very sad and somber episode this week. We've had a real tragedy within the local film community. Cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was killed. And we'll be joined to talk about film crew safety and making movies, westerns in particular, here in New Mexico for the hour with UPM Alton Walpole. But first, let's talk about some of this news. This is from Time Magazine. The film crew for Rust voiced complaints before fatal on-set shooting. Hours before Alec Baldwin fired a fatal gunshot from a prop gun that he had been told was safe, a camera crew for the movie he was filming walked off the job to protest conditions and production issues that included safety concerns. Disputes in the production of the Western film Rust began almost from the start in early October and accumulated with 7 crew members walking off several hours before 42-year-old cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was killed. The crew members had expressed their discontent with matters that ranged from safety procedures to their housing and accommodations. At a rehearsal on the film set Thursday at Bonanza Creek Ranch outside Santa Fe, the gun Baldwin used was one of 3 that a firearm specialist, or armorer, had set on a cart outside the building, where a scene was being rehearsed, according to the court records. Court records indicate that an assistant director, Dave Halls, grabbed a prop gun off a cart and handed it to Baldwin, indicating incorrectly that the weapon didn't carry live rounds by yelling, "Cold gun." When Baldwin pulled the trigger, he unwittingly killed Hutchins and wounded director Joel Souza, who is standing behind her inside a wooden chapel-like building. New Mexico workplace safety investigators are examining if film industry standards for gun safety were followed during the production of Rust. The Los Angeles Times, citing 2 crew members it did not name, reported that 5 days before the shooting, Baldwin's stunt double accidentally fired 2 live rounds after being told the gun didn't have any ammunition. At a vigil Saturday, around 200 film crew workers gathered for a candlelight vigil as the sun set. They shared grief at the loss of one of their own and fear of accidents on their own film sets. Several in attendance lit candles, held a moment of silence, read poetry, and made brief comments, including one testimonial to her artistic spark and generosity. "Her death shouldn't have happened. Union set should be safe sets," said Liz Pecos, president of IATSE Local 480. The crew member that spoke to the AP said he never witnessed any formal orientation about weapons used on the set, which normally would take place before the filming begins. The crew was initially housed at the Courtyard Marriott in Santa Fe, according to the crew member. 4 days in, however, they were told that going forward, they would be housed at the Budget Coyote South Hotel. Some crew members balked at staying there. Quote, "We packed our gear and left that morning," end quote, the crew member said of the Thursday walkout. Gutierrez, the film's armorer, is the daughter of a longtime Hollywood firearms expert. She gave an interview in September to the Voices of the West podcast in which she said she had learned how to handle guns from her father since she was a teenager. During the podcast interview, Gutierrez shared that she had just finished her first movie in the role of head armorer, a project in Montana starring Nicolas Cage titled The Old Way. Quote, "I was really nervous about it at first, and I almost didn't take the job because I wasn't sure if I was ready. But doing it, it went really smoothly," she said. And this is from Yahoo News. Halyna Hutchins, remembered as a gifted cinematographer. Halyna Hutchins, the cinematographer, was fatally shot by Alec Baldwin, traveled far during her 42 years. She grew up on a remote Soviet military base and worked on documentary films in Eastern Europe before studying film in Los Angeles and embarking on a promising movie-making career. Hutchins was shot with a prop gun Thursday on the set of the Western Rust near Santa Fe, New Mexico. Court records released Friday indicated that an assistant director handed Baldwin a loaded weapon and told him it was safe to use. Detectives are investigating. And this is the latest from the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office. From the LA Times, as detectives were serving a third search warrant on the set of the film Rust, late Wednesday afternoon, the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office provided the Times with an exclusive update on the investigation of the on-set shooting last week that left one crew member dead and another injured. Sheriff's Office spokesman Juan Rios provided new details to the Times about the investigation. He answered questions about interviews conducted by detectives, the gun fired by Rust actor Alec Baldwin, and the bullet discharge. Which key players have been interviewed? Rios said that investigators have interviewed Baldwin, David Halls, the Rust assistant director who reportedly handed Baldwin the gun that killed Halyna Hutchins and wounded Joel Souza. And they interviewed Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the armorer who was in charge of the gun. Rios declined to provide additional names of people who have been interviewed. What do detectives know about the gun that Baldwin fired? Rios said the term prop gun, which has been used in many reports about the shooting, can be misleading because it's a film industry term. He said it's used to describe any guns used in film, whether a plastic gun or an actual firearm that fires bullets. Quote, it doesn't refer to a prop like props you use, like make-believe props. It refers to property of the production. That's within the industry how that's defined, Rios said. What do investigators know about the bullet that struck Hutchins and Souza? Quote, we recovered the projectile from the medical personnel at the hospital because it was extracted from Souza's body, Rios said. It was the medical personnel who removed the projectile from his body and turned it over to the investigators, and it's now evidence. Did people working on Rust engage in target shooting on or near the set and were live rounds in the gun for that purpose? Rios said he could not confirm or deny whether the sheriff's office has encountered evidence of target shooting by members of the Rust cast production team or crew. Quote, we're looking into that, he said. Acknowledging that detectives are unaware of rumors on set target shoot, acknowledging that detectives are aware of the rumors. Is the sheriff's office working with anyone in the film industry as it investigates the shooting? And Rios said, I think that right now it's confined to the detectives that have been assigned to the case, the ones working on it. Now this is from KRQE. New Mexico authorities, lead projectile recovered from Rust director. KRQE charges are not off the table as the investigation into a deadly movie set shooting continues. According to the Santa Fe District Attorney, cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was killed and director Joel Souza was injured when Alec Baldwin fired a long Colt revolver while rehearsing a scene last week at Bonanza Creek Ranch near Santa Fe. From CNN, Rust armorer mishandled guns on previous film with Nicolas Cage, crew members say. And these are two crew members that they don't name. Oh, excuse me. Stu Brumbarow, the Krieg grip on the Old Way, told CNN that Gutierrez handled guns on the set of a project in a reckless manner and that he urged the film's assistant director to fire her. Quote, there's a universal way to handle weapons on set, and immediately red flags went up when I worked with Hannah, Brumbaugh said. That's why I asked for her dismissal. This is why people get injured, because of rookie mistakes, he said. She walked out onto the set with live rounds with no announcement whatsoever to the cast and crew by her, the source said. She never announced to anyone that she was walking on the set carrying firearms loaded with blanks with her. She didn't carry the firearms safely. And, quote, make an announcement, you just blew my effing eardrums out, Cage screamed. So, Rumbaugh cited an incident where Gutierrez fired a gun near Nicolas Cage's ear, and Nicolas Cage let her have it over it. And then the film community, this is from the Albuquerque Journal, honored Halyna Hutchins. They gathered on the Albuquerque Civic Plaza. She was 42 years old. And I think there's a ton to unpack here. So I want to bring on somebody who really knows the ins and outs of making a Western in New Mexico. He's worked on more than 100 films and television shows, and I think can really help us kind of get a sense of what it means to make a Western safely here in New Mexico, and particularly at Bonanza Creek. Please welcome to the show, Alton Walpole.
Thanks, Jacques. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, sure. You're coming in loud and clear.
Okay. 100 shows I've done? That makes me seem really old. But I did one every day. Okay.
Well, not in a row, I hope.
It felt like it.
So first, I think we should maybe just talk about some of the misconceptions that we're seeing in the news, and maybe we can get to safety and what you think this can mean for the future of the business here. I know it's not just guns. There's cranes and trains and cars and trucks and a lot of different ways to get killed on a set. But this particular tragedy, I think it's clear it should have been avoided. So if you want to start somewhere around there, we can move more into the specifics of it as well.
Okay, I can start in that area. I guess the first thing I'd like to say, Jacques, is I think what you're doing with the Independent Film Festival is great. And I know that this year you have a dedication to Imogene Hughes, who was the woman who I think is basically responsible for starting Bonanza Creek. It was a Western television series that was done there, and they built the first parts of the town. And she sort of stood up for building that against a rancher family that are not particularly wild about filmmaking. They'd rather be ranching, which I think they may be right. But basically, she persisted and got the town built for a film called Lucky Luke. That was a European television Western series. It's grown a lot since then. It's been used for a lot of different Westerns through the years. And unfortunately, Imogene Hughes passed away a few weeks ago, which it's interesting that she has left us before this tragedy happened on the place that she worked so hard to establish. So I would like to thank you for your involvement with promoting Imogene Hughes and for this radio show for tackling kind of tough subjects. It's a really sad day. I think this is being recorded quite a bit in advance of its playing back. So we don't know all the details yet. I don't know if we ever will. I do know that right now, everybody's lawyering up, as they say. I mean, everybody has a lawyer now, and everybody is saying, I'm not guilty. So I don't know what that means, and hopefully we will find out what the cause was. But I can tell you in my experience of doing Westerns in New Mexico, there's a few things I'd like to mention. One is the props, as you noted what they are, or the guns in this case. I've always gotten them through a prop master and an armorer from reputable companies in Los Angeles. I'm not sure where these props came from. That will probably come out, but I've heard that they weren't from really reputable places. Secondly, occasionally there are real firearms used, so the actor can feel the weight of it and what it feels like. And that's what dummies are for. So if there's a close-up of the gun, you can actually see the end of the cartridge in the chamber, which sometimes adds to realism. And I think authenticity is a big part of making a Western. It has to be authentic. Often an actor will be sent to a certified, authorized gun range in preparation and actually fires a gun under a massive supervision way away from the set so they can feel what the recoil is like or what a gun feels like to fire. But never, never are live rounds near a set, ever. It's absolutely a no-no. The other thing that often happens is the armorer who works under the prop master, who's in charge of the weapons, there's always a vault. And it's sometimes a portable vault, and it's often in what they call the prop truck, or where the props are kept. And the arms are always locked in there, and no one has a key except the armorer and sometimes the prop master. But who's ever responsible for those armaments, they're always locked. They're not accessible to anybody, along with any ammunition that may be there, which could be blanks, dummies, etc., but not live rounds. They're not even kept there. The other thing that happens is it's usually the armorer's responsibility to hand the weapon to the actor, not the ADs, the armorer. Now with the COVID protocol, it sounds like it was put on a cart and the armorer couldn't go on the set because there's a lot of cells. In fact, during this time of COVID, a movie set is probably the safest place any of us could be. There are cells and tests, and it's a massive undertaking. Lunch is different. I mean, even drinking water is different. If you remove your mask to drink your water, you have to go through a whole protocol to do that. And so it's a very complicated situation. So I don't know exactly how that worked with the armor and the cart I've heard about that went to the AD that took it to the actor. But it's never the actor's responsibility to know what the weapon is. The actors have other things on their minds. It's the armorer, and secondly, it's the AD, and that chamber should be checked by the armorer in front of the actor and the AD so they can see it. That's really important. Now with COVID, I don't know if that was possible, as I'm saying, but there is no way that there should ever be live ammunition in a gun. That's definite. In the last few years, because of CGI, which is computer generated imagery, and a lot of the effects, real guns are not even used anymore. The reason they have blanks in them is so when you shoot a film, the authenticity is partly because of what they call muzzle flash. So there's a slight flash of light or smoke that comes out the end of the gun barrel. And that is basically to give it authenticity of a gun being fired, along with the sound, et cetera, and a recoil, which can even be done. So the last films I've done, basically the firing of the gun, there weren't even blanks. And often the plastic gun's a little lightweight for an actor. So you give them a heavy gun, but it has no firing pin and it can't be shot. And that gives them a sense of weight. And the muzzle flash is put in after the fact by the effects people or the CGI people that work on it during editorial, during the final parts of the film. It's very odd because sometimes there's not even a sound. You know, somebody might yell bang on the set when the actor picks up the gun. And the recoil is a little difficult for the actor if there's a close-up of that. but the muzzle flash is put in CGI, and that way everybody is absolutely safe. There are no blanks used at all on the set, and that's the new trend. I would just say on the other side of that, the person or thing or object being shot sometimes has what's called a squib, which is a small metal plate taped to their body that has a blood bag on it, a little bag full of artificial blood, and it has a little charge behind it. So what used to be in the past, that little charge has wires running to an effects person. When the gun is fired toward an object or a person, like a wood splitting off a wall or somebody's hat or a chest or whatever is being shot, those wires are connected together. That blood bag explodes from the little charge, blows a hole through the shirt or coat or blouse or wood, and that's how it looks like. So it's actually coming from within, going out rather than the other way around. And that's how gunshots are. Same thing happens with windshield brakes. There's a rod inside the car, not outside. And that's how that's done. And even that's gone away. Now you dress the actor with a gunshot wound, or you still use squibs in a wall because it doesn't matter so much, but they have a gunshot, and sometimes that's even CGI. They have a gunshot wound and they cover it with something that looks exactly like the shirt or blouse. So when the firing happens, which is all done in post, the sound of a gunshot, they remove that and you see the wound. So I think there's a lot of things to blame. I would say the big issue is that we have to not put profits above safety. And I think that is the real main issue. It's about profit above safety. Sets should be safe. It takes another 5 minutes to do something, take the time. You're dealing with lives, you're dealing with accidents. A movie set is a dangerous place to work. Heavy equipment, restraints on finances and time, especially with sunlight on a Western. You want to get it shot before it gets dark. And I think that there is a motivation to push too hard, work too fast, and work crews till they're not safe anymore, or they're in an unsafe situation. My assessment of it is whoever is responsible for the hiring, whether it be the producers or the line producer or the unit production manager, or all of them combined, are the main people responsible. And then the crew that worked on it, I know some of them were non-union, I think they have a responsibility too. So I think it was a whole series of incidents that caused this accident to happen. And it's a shame, it's a tragedy. It's a 42-year-old woman, an up-and-coming director of photography, has a young boy who's 9 years old. She's from the Ukraine, she's in New Mexico, she's making a Western with a very big name star. And this was a big break for her, and now she's no longer with us. And I think it's a very, very sad situation.
Yeah, it's I think just crushing, and just sent shockwaves through this little community. Um, and I'm so glad you were able to clear up the misconception that Alec Baldwin was to check the chamber. I know, an old country boy thinks, oh, someone looks into a chamber, then hands you the gun, then you check the chamber, and that should be shown to the actor, but the actor's not in any way responsible for that. And I know on Twitter that's been kind of reverberating throughout, and I'm glad you could bring up that just putting profit over the safety of people is, at the root of the problem.
Yeah, I think so. It's not that an actor shouldn't check that armor or that gun or whatever, but it's not their responsibility. And if somebody says it's a cold prop, or it's not loaded, or it's clear, or gives them that information, that should be enough for the actor. I agree with you as a country boy myself, that you never take a handgun without checking to make sure you know what it is. But, if you are on a movie set and you were an actor and you've had a handgun day after day after day after day, sometimes you don't think, I bet the first time he had a handgun, he checked it. I'll bet you anything. And I bet this was not the first day he had a handgun. So you take an assumption. It's like getting in your car. You may check the tires the first time you get in it, but the 40th time you get in it, I don't know if you're going to check the tires and the tread. And I think basically that it wasn't his responsibility. It should have been done in front of him. It should have been checked. And there's a lot of other people to do that because the actor has a lot of other things on their mind to deal with. So I do not blame Alec Baldwin, the actor, for part of this. He was a producer, which is a whole nother matter. But I think it was not his fault. And I think what's been on social media is extremely rude in claiming to blame somebody for this. I think it's a series of accidents. At least the county sheriff, which was yesterday here in the press conference, said there was complacency. And that's a big statement because I think that's true. I think there's a lot of inexperience that went on that set. And I'll let you say something, but I have one other thing I'll say afterwards when you get done, Jacques.
Oh, I was just going to say training. It probably brings us to training. So please go ahead with whatever you need to say.
That's what I was going to talk about is training. I think the issue here is that, making a film is as dangerous as making a pizza or as dangerous as drilling a pipeline. And if you are, I have a friend who said, well, my father was an airline pilot, so I think I can fly. I don't think that's right. I think you have to train. And training is a big issue in the state because right now, because of a lot of factors, streaming, people are demanding content because they're at home. COVID shut down a lot of shows and people stay home. So the demand for content, which is what we call film or television or programs, even this is content, this radio show, the demand is high. So there's a lot of people trying to make content. New Mexico is benefiting from it until this accident happened, basically, because there's a lot of film and television programs being shot in New Mexico right now. The government has done a good job with incentives. The people and the crews have been great because it's a very film-friendly state to work in, even at the Coyote Motel, wherever that is. And I think a lot of people like to come here rather than going to Canada or to some other place that may have really tough weather right now with hurricanes and rainstorms. Mexico's dry, but it's a comfortable place to work. And so this demand has caused film production that comes into New Mexico to be struggling to hire a crew from the union because the rosters are all out there working. I don't know the particulars of Rust, but what I've heard is that there's so many shows here that they were kind of late in asking for a crew and they couldn't get a union crew on their union show. So when the union can't provide you with a roster of people to choose from to hire that are in their union, they say you can hire what's called the overflow list, or it's non-union people that are less experienced, but you're allowed to hire them on your show. Now, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that that's how the armor was hired. I don't know, but and in some other departments too, some in construction and some in visual special effects, that they were non-union people on that show because New Mexico could not provide trained people. So my big issue that I've been harping on for the last year at least is let's coordinate this training. Let's do training in New Mexico. So when a parent comes to me and said, I have a daughter who's 25 years old, and I've been reading in the paper that there's $500 to $600 million of money being spent in New Mexico, and it's a great job. How can I get my daughter involved in that job? She really wants to work as a costume designer or makeup or something. I don't know what to tell them. The union has an overflow list. If you go on their website, you can find all the steps you need to do. Then you're voted on. You have to put in 30 days. There's a lot of stuff. I think the path to becoming a member of the union needs to be very clear. The camera department is not represented in New Mexico by a union. They're represented only in LA with 600. The art department people, the designer, the art director, are represented by a union in LA also. But in New Mexico, 480 represents a tremendous number of the jobs, electricians and grips and et cetera. And in Albuquerque, there's the Teamster Union that represents wranglers, location managers, and drivers. So there needs to be a clear path. Additionally, we now have Netflix and NBC Universal really coming into this state, putting money into studios. We now have stages all over the place and more coming, and the weather is good, the light is good. And 20 years ago, they said the crews were great. Now, it's so overwhelmed. It's very difficult to hire really good and experienced people. And the training is really important. There's no coordination, there's no collaboration to do it. There's a lot of people trying to do it. Netflix is trying to do it. The Mexico Film Office is doing it. The unions are trying to do it. There's independent people. I taught a class for a company in LA that came here called Studio International, and they were great students. They paid a lot of money and got really good training, but they still didn't know how to get in the union. So I think there needs to be a coordination or a cooperation among all these entities. Maybe one curriculum. So if you want to be a production accountant on a film, no matter where you study that or how you study it, you're studying with somebody that knows it, and you have the same curriculum and you understand all the parts of accounting for a film. The same goes with armors. You know, you understand what you have to do, or prop makers. And the other thing I think is now New Mexico is being overwhelmed, not only because of its location and its film-friendly atmosphere, but also because there really, really are good crews here, but they're really not able to fill all the jobs. And so training and building up this crew base is really an important part. And unless it's all coordinated, it's not going to happen. I think to get the rebate that productions look for to come to New Mexico, because it's another incentive, that they should have to hire quite a few non-union people, not take away union jobs, but an additional crew member that is not in the union, but wants to learn how a camera department works, how a grip department works, how an electric department works. And they're like an extra person hired for on-set training, not responsible, not key members or assistants, but really the kind of the lowest part of the crew. Because a film set's a very, very interesting place to be. It's like a whole nother world. And all of us have gone to places where we see all these people doing things and we're not quite sure what they're doing, because it's a different world. And a film world, a film set is that way also. And that gives them that onset experience, plus being trained by a very good mentor in a workshop that's affordable, should cost a little money, 50 bucks, 100 bucks, I don't know, not very much, but certainly not the thousands that some of the students paid that I taught. I think that's really wrong. It should be coordinated. And a lot of these entities coming into New Mexico have agreed as part of what they get to come here to put money up for training. So I think financing it wouldn't be that hard. I also heard that sometimes the person that's supposed to teach it got a job on a film, can't teach it. Well, there's a lot of us people that have not, I don't work on location much anymore. I consult, I do a lot of things and do budgets and schedules, but I'm not really on the set all the time. I have time to teach. A lot of people have time to teach. And I don't know anything about armors. You know, I'm a much more a paper pusher, implementer, manager kind of guy. So I do like being on the set, and I came up through all those things as a production assistant, as a grip, as a camera assistant. I've done all those jobs. So I understand what goes on. And I think that's important. The inexperience is starting to show, is starting to bleed through all these cracks. And the idea by the producers that profit is more important than safety is starting to show. And this is one of the results of it, sadly, that we've had somebody be killed on a set and somebody else hurt. not to mention the memory of all that crew of what happened in front of them. We talk about PTSD from being at war. We don't want to have PTSD situations because of being on a film set. I mean, it's sad in every direction. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox. I really feel strongly about these things.
No, thank you so much for going there. And I think what you're saying about shadowing or mentorship, it's the kind of thing that's so complicated that really the only way to learn it is through experience or through mentorship. And so, I mean, I know there's the Stagecoach Foundation and the community college, and they have various training programs and that type of thing. But I mean, I think something a little more structured and hands-on is in order. And so rather than it being the community college or a nonprofit, maybe the state really has to put some money behind training for these workers.
I'm not sure how that works. And I think the Stagecoach Foundation is great. And I think all these other institutions are really good. I don't think they should stop doing what they're doing. What I'm really saying is they should be coordinated and cooperative. And maybe they should all have the same curriculum. Maybe one has a little spicier thing here or there, but basically, when you go to train to be like an electrician, and I know that Ray Ortega recently did a 3-part workshop with the Stagecoach Foundation on being an electrician on a set. Electrician's the one that provides all the lighting, which is also a very dangerous job. With LEDs, the power that's on a set is less, but it's still dangerous handling electricity and lights and burnouts and putting them high in the air and securing things in the wind. And there's a lot of issues. And I think he's a really master at that and probably did a great class. I didn't go, but I think it's probably great. So I just think that all these organizations should still do that. There's 22 institutions in the state that have film training programs. And there's a difference between learning how to do that as a job, which is a craft of some kind, and having the artistic experience, like maybe in the University of New Mexico, you learn really great ways to make things look different. That's not what this is about. This is a skill program to learn how do you make it look different. It's not an artistic thing, it's an implementation thing. It's a job, a good paying job with good benefits. And I just think they should be coordinated. And part of that is having the same approved curriculum for no matter who does it. But these items have to be handled. The other thing that happens on a set when a call sheet is published, there are attachments to it if you're going to have tough things to breathe that day or something on the set that's going to hurt somebody. That always has to be attached to a call sheet. Sometimes there's 5 or 6 attachments. And the first thing every morning, there's a safety meeting of all the people. And the AD runs that, the first AD who's in charge of running that set. And it used to be when I worked, you know, we always had it, but at the bottom of what they call a production report, which is a legal document of what happened that day. I'd love to see the one from Russ, but it must be pretty bad. But what happened on that day? Who was there? What scenes did you shoot? Where did you shoot them? What time they were shot? How long they were? It's a huge document, 2-sided legal size piece of paper with small print. And it used to be that it would say a safety meeting was held at call time. Call time is when you arrive on the set. About, I don't know how long ago it was, when I was working, the Motion Picture Association and the Directors Guild of America and all the people that really look at these documents said, that's got to be more detailed. Who attended, what was discussed. So safety has always been a dominant situation in making a film, and it's even gotten more dominant years ago. And after all these accidents we've had, it's going to become even more dominant. I'm not trying to stop the industry. I'm just saying there's no reason to risk your life to work on a film.
Well, thanks so much, Alton, and thanks so much for the letter you sent out addressing all of this. That's pretty much a show, but if there's anything else you want to say before we go, please have at it.
I would just say one thing. It takes all of us. And what you do, Jacques, is really important. You have to see films, you have to understand films, and you have to make films. And you have to be safe in doing all of it. And we all have to work together to keep this going. I think you should not keep promoting how much money is coming into the state, because I don't know if you've seen any of that. I've seen very little of it. I did in my past, maybe some of it. But basically, it's not a 500 to 600 million dollar industry that we're all partaking in. That may be spread over car rentals and hotels and restaurants and money that's spent we don't even know about. I worked with an actor once, his wife came to Santa Fe and spent $20,000 in one afternoon buying Indian artifacts. That's not on any record, but that store or stores where those things were purchased may show that that was bought from somebody involved in the film industry. I don't know how you track it, but I think there's a lot of that going on instead of a lot of attention to safety. Safety should be above profit.
That was Alton Walpole, everybody. And there's a uh, GoFundMe campaign that you can donate to in memory of Halyna Hutchins. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.